LSU and Vanderbilt is where we're going to start today. And if y'all heard me talk this week, you understand where I'm coming from on this Vanderbilt team. I called their statistics fraudulent earlier this week, and I stand by that. That does not mean, and I've said so in the segment, that I think Vanderbilt is fraudulent. I don't think they are. I think Vanderbilt's a really solid SEC football team. I stopped short of good, certainly stopped short of great. They're playing against the Vanderbilt expectation, and LSU's playing against the LSU expectation, which is why you've got teams in fairly similar situations who have beat up on some lesser teams that have a loss against what I perceive to be a pretty good SEC team. And people were giving toasts and cheers to Vanderbilt, and people were saying that LSU needs to fire everybody associated with the program. It's because I've talked about all fall that LSU's playing against a championship curve. Vanderbilt's not playing on a championship curve. They're playing on the Vanderbilt curve, which means you win 3 or 4 SEC games, you've really done something. But I think when you take those two things together and you take an LSU team that's struggling relative to its expectation and a Vanderbilt team that's exceeding what we expect out of them, you find kind of a match in the middle, which is why I think Vegas has had this thing between 1.5 and 2.5 all week, and why you're going to get picks on both sides of the ledger this week in this game. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I talked at length about the Vanderbilt offense yesterday and about what they're trying to do and how they establish things. And I want to talk about the Vanderbilt defense today. You know, Vanderbilt's defense statistically is doing a very nice job. Their offense makes sure that they're not on the field very often. Their head coach is a great defensive mind. They've done an excellent job rushing off the edge and creating pressures. If you look at where they stand in the Southeastern Conference when it comes to getting back there and sacking the quarterback, they're fourth. They've got 18 of them. They average 3 a game, and that's very solid work. That's the strength of their team. You look at what they do off the edge. Capers is really tough. He's got 4.5 sacks. Wood has 2 sacks. Like they've got some guys that can give you some issues on the edge. And we know that LSU has struggled at right tackle, and Tyree Adams at left tackle has been okay. That's what Vanderbilt does best. What I was looking at specifically is Vanderbilt's rushing defense, because I think that's relevant with LSU trying to find something on the ground. And you look at the run defense numbers, and Vanderbilt's 5th in the SEC in terms of yards per game in rushing defense. They're 6th when it comes to yards per carry. When you look at rushing touchdowns allowed, Vanderbilt is 3rd in the league. Like, those numbers are very, very good. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a team that is doing a pretty good job of stopping the run. And then I look at what Alabama did in that game, and I really prioritize what Alabama did against Vanderbilt as opposed to South Carolina or Virginia Tech or Charleston Southern or Utah State. Like, I want to see what Bama did. And Bama ran it 38 times in that game for 146 yards and a touchdown. It was not a prolific effort on the ground by the Tide, who I think run it better than LSU. It was a good effort. I don't think it was a great effort. I look at Jam Miller. When he's healthy, he's a solid back in the SEC. And I look at their offensive line, and it's been Alabama's offensive line's been better than LSU's for sure. So I'm interested in how effective LSU can be on the ground, because as we look at these baby steps, the baby steps have to come for this group to progress, because you're not anticipating, or at least I'm not, LSU to become this juggernaut on the ground overnight. And I'm not going to sit here and suggest that running the ball in South Carolina proves a significant point. I think it's a step in the right direction. I'm certainly glad they ran it for 160 on South Carolina instead of the 50 they ran against Ole Miss for. Like, that's good. But, okay, where can you go from there? Prove it. And I think LSU's got a chance to run the ball early in this game, and I haven't said that all year. I think they have a chance to run the ball early in this game because I think Clark Lea and Vanderbilt are going to sit back a little bit to play coverage. I think they probably have to. When you consider Aaron Anderson back, which we expect on Saturday, and you consider what Trey'Dez Green showed last week, that's two guys who are problem causers. And I would contend that the speed of Barrion Brown and Chris Hilton, when they're on the field, is a problem causer for Vanderbilt. And this goes back to the Alabama team that threw for 340 on him. And I think Clark Lea probably looks at this and goes, okay, let's take away their fastball first and see if they can drop the breaking ball in for a strike first. So I'm going to take away the best I can, Anderson, Green, Hilton, Brown first. And if I can win with 5 up front, like some teams have done, Ole Miss certainly did it 3 weeks ago, as it were, then I've got something now. And I think that's probably where Vanderbilt starts. And if you're LSU, you've got to try and go, okay, we're going to run some straight ahead stuff. You want to do that with Juwan Johnson out of the Wildcat? Great. You want to do that with Malachi Lane back there with him as a fullback? Great. You want to put Jack Pyburn in there for a snap or two? Great. You want to hand the ball to Xavion Thomas motioning out of the backfield? Great. You just want to give it to Caden Durham 14 times in the first half? Great. I'm okay with any of that. I don't have something in my mind that goes, hey, this is the way you have to do it. You just got to get it done one way or another. And if LSU finds some early success on the ground, which they did some different things, this is one of those deals. I don't have any pride at all here on this radio station. I trust Flynn and Hester to break down tape in the running game before I do anything. And they're suggesting that last week was the most creative we've seen LSU. We saw pulling guards. We saw some power. We saw some wrinkles. I can tell personnel. I can tell you that Juwan Johnson's out there. I can tell you that Jack Pyburn or Malachi Lane's out there. I'm not as good at diagnosing what exactly they're trying to accomplish at the line of scrimmage with each individual blocker. Flynn and Hester can do it. They're suggesting last week, step of progress after the bye with Durham healthy. I want to see more of that in the first half. And if you see a first half where LSU's able to run for 4 yards on first down, LSU's able to convert 3rd and 2 on the ground, LSU gets into the red zone and does run the ball successfully. If you see that, LSU might win this game by a couple scores, because I do not think that Vanderbilt can run with LSU out on the perimeter, and I think the quarterback is ready to go this week. I liked what I heard from Garrett Nussmeier on Tuesday. I think there's a quiet confidence there. But there is a but. If you can't, and those windows get real tight, and you can't run the ball, and you're constantly in 2nd and 11 and 2nd and 10, and you're counting on Nussmeier time and time and time again to win down the field with his arm in tight windows because there's so many defenders out there, that's when the Vanderbilt pass rush can and I believe will get to you. I don't trust LSU's tackles right now. They blocked okay, but Vanderbilt's got a couple edge guys that can win, and if Vanderbilt knows that LSU's throwing the ball, that's when Clark Lea can kind of dial it up and they can get after it. Bama did enough on the ground against Vanderbilt, running for 146, to give Ty Simpson pockets, and he went nuts on that secondary. Nuts on that secondary. And Nussmeier can do that. I'm ready to proclaim that. But that needs to be the second phase of this. I think you'll know pretty early where LSU sits offensively, because I don't think this is an X's and O's thing to an extent. I think there's a Jimmy's and Joe's element to this. Keep in mind, goes back to the original point of the segment. We threw bouquets all over the place on Vanderbilt last year. They went 7-6. That's what you're playing on Saturday. You're playing a 7-6 program. You're playing maybe a program that goes 8-4 in the regular season, probably 7-5. That's what you're playing tomorrow. But I am not in a position to sit here and look down my nose at Vanderbilt when LSU's offense has produced to the way it has produced to this point in the schedule. Because I promise you, if you can't run the ball tomorrow and all of a sudden you're behind the chains and you score 17 or 20 points in this game like you did against Clemson, like you did against Florida, like you did against South Carolina, you'll lose. I feel convicted in that. You're going to have to do something on the offensive side. And guess what? What you did last week against South Carolina, against what I think is probably comparable personnel, that's enough with 2 or 3 cleaner plays in the red zone. That's enough. Doesn't have to be worlds different, but it has to start with a little bit of ground game. And I'm telling you this, you can say, well, that's such an obvious thing to say. We've been saying, I have not said that all year. I told you when they went to Oxford 2 weeks ago, I said they will not run the ball. That environment, that defense, that coordinator, I have no trust they can run it. I do not sit here and say that on this Football Friday. I say I think there is a chance LSU can run the ball. If they don't, trouble. Because I think Vanderbilt will do some things offensively to bleed the clock, keep things close, and, potentially beat you late. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.